So we're in weeks 3 to 4, and this is a screenshot video. We're going to have to do a couple regarding the notes about the general principles of criminal responsibility in New York. At some point after we go through kind of some conceptual material, we can take a look at parts of the law of homicide in a pretty interesting court case in New York State from some years ago, but can get us thinking and talking about uh, the general principles of criminal responsibility. But to get us started, uh, we could say that there is a general theory of criminal liability that meaning criminal conduct is essentially in two parts. First of all, it's what someone has done or not done, rarely, but it can happen. And there's a Latin term, actus reus, and I've never used that term outside of teaching in this course. So I don't think people in district attorneys' offices or in courtrooms or in defense attorneys' offices are walking around talking about actus reus. But again, we're at a very conceptual level at this point. And then the second part of criminal liability is mens rea, which you may have actually heard of, but that's the so-called guilty state of mind. So, as I point out, the commission of a crime occurs at a very general level when an individual, and let's call him, her, them, the defendant, has either done something or not done something, which is our actus reus, with a certain state of mind, and that is our mens rea. So, typically, just doing something itself without a so-called guilty state of mind is not sufficient to create criminal liability. And I use an example of an individual carefully, soberly, in a car that's well equipped and in good working order, driving home from work, observing all of the rules of the road, uh, and someone walks or runs in front of the car, the person hits that person who walked in front of the car, ran in front of the car, kills them. I don't think we're going to see any criminal liability there, though the person drove a car that killed someone. We're not going to find any guilty state of mind. So typically, we need both. Now, we're going to focus in New York terminology for both actus reus and for mens rea. And you'll note that I make some references to the New York penal law. And in an earlier video that I just completed, or screenshot video, I told you how you can find those sections. In any event, in New York State, the conduct part of criminal liability is either a voluntary act or an omission. And a voluntary act essentially is defined as a bodily movement performed consciously as a result of effort or determination. And if you think about it, nearly everything we do is going to be considered a voluntary act. Uh, I guess we could think of a few exceptions. Perhaps what a person is experiencing while asleep, or what a person body is doing when that person is in the throes of, let's say, an epileptic seizure. We wouldn't consider those actions a voluntary act because they're not a result of effort or determination. Some neurological things are happening, but the so-called we aren't in control of those. And as I point out, stabbing someone with a knife is going to be considered a voluntary act. So rarely does voluntary act come into play. It's there, in other words. Omission is kind of an interesting concept where criminal liability might be predicated on the basis that a person has failed to act. And I point you to the definition that's found in the penal law that an omission is a failure to perform an act when there is a legal duty to perform the act. So I'm in my law office right now when I'm driving home on this rainy January afternoon. Uh, I'm returning from my pause. If I'm driving home this rainy January afternoon, and as I travel down Sheridan Drive, I see someone who is in obvious distress at the side of the road. Maybe they were hit by a car. Uh, I'm hoping that my sense of right and wrong uh, compels me to do something. In other words, it compels me to do something rather than simply keep on moving. But I'm going to tell you that my failure to go to that person's rescue is not going to be considered an omission because I don't have any legal duty, at least in the state of New York, to go to someone's rescue unless I've agreed to watch over that person. In our example, I didn't, or I created the situation. And again, I didn't. If we wanted to see where we might find omission in play, we could consider the parents of a minor and the child. Let's make it the child's 3 or 4 years old, and the child is in obvious need of medical attention. At that point, under New York law, certainly the parents have a duty to take reasonable steps to protect the health, safety, and welfare of their children. And a parent's failure in that situation to obtain what any person would believe to be medical attention could be considered an omission. And heaven forbid, but if due to the parent's omission the child dies, we might be able to conclude that the parent has committed some form of homicide. More of that later. But that's our actus reus part of the penal law, a voluntary act or omission. We need to say more when we get down to the New York terms for mens rea. And again, remember, we identified mens rea as the so-called guilty state of mind. The four guilty states of mind, or if you will, four elements of mental culpability, which now brings us into the terminology of the New York penal law, are intentionally, excuse me, knowingly, recklessly, and criminal negligence. And as I point out, intentionally and knowingly are not particularly difficult to put together. We're going to have to spend some time with the last two, recklessly and criminal negligence. In any event, let's go to intentionally. And as I point out, the key component of the definition is that a person has acted with the conscious objective to cause such result or to engage in such conduct. And oftentimes it would seem if we know what a person has done, we can infer from just that that they acted with a certain conscious objective. And I note that if, for example, A walks up to B and stabs him in the heart with a knife, I suspect that most of us will conclude he acted with a conscious objective to kill B, or if you will, intentionally kill B. There might be some ambiguity in other situations in terms of did a person actually act with conscious objective? And there it may be useful for, let's say, the prosecution to establish that the defendant had some motive to bring about a result. And in that case, the motive, if we wanted to get fancy, we could say that the motive uh, is circumstantial evidence of intent. Motive is not required, it's not one of the four elements, but it can be in certain instances powerful evidence of intent. Knowingly, the key component of that definition is a person is aware that his conduct is of such nature or that such circumstance exists. Typically, knowingly comes into crimes of possession. So if a person is charged with knowing possession of criminal, stolen property, I should say, the prosecution is going to have to show that the defendant not only possessed the property, but that he or she, they knew that it was stolen. But again, I don't think intent or intentionally and knowingly give us great deal of conceptual difficulties. But as I have also noted, we need to build on an understanding or build to an understanding of the culpable mental states of recklessly and criminal negligence. So what I'm going to do is stop or conclude this video, and in our next video, we'll put our shoulder to the wheel to see if we can come up with some pretty good, comfortable understanding about recklessly and criminal negligence. So this will conclude this video.